Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar, Meaningful Conversations that Reinforce Culture and Increase Profit. My name is Dina Giavalli. I handle the marketing and communications at TTI Success Insights. Thank you so much for joining us today. Before I turn it over to our fabulous presenter, I want to go over a few housekeeping items. If you're active on social media, I encourage you to use our hashtag. Today's hashtag is words that work. We look forward to hearing what resonates with you from today's presentation. As we move through the webinar, we'll have some polls to get your feedback. We will also be recording today's presentation and we will send it out to you within 24 hours. Our presenter today is Adam Wong, and Adam is the Vice President of TTI Success Insights North America. And now I'll go ahead and turn it over to Adam.
Great.
Adam?
Thank you very much, Dina. So as Dina mentioned, we are going to be recording this, and we do have quite a few people on today. So everybody is muted in case you're trying to chat with us. We can't hear you, but you can definitely hopefully hear us. So if you'd like to ask a question throughout the little presentation today, please do so and use the question panel on GoToWebinar's control panel, and those will pop up for us. If for whatever reason I don't get to your question, or maybe I answer a question kind of halfway and you want to hear some more, feel free to email me. My email address is right there, adam@ttisi.com. And research shows that we can only keep your attention for about 18 minutes. So this will be a quick, to the point, and right around the 20-minute mark in case you're trying to plan other things for afterwards. So without going any further, let's go ahead and dive right on into the meat of today's presentation. So meaningful conversations that reinforce culture and increase profit within your business. Let's start out with a quote from Tony Robbins. To effectively communicate, we must realize that we are all different in the way we perceive the world and use this understanding as a guide to our communication with others. So we all know this, that we're all different. We have the science to show that. Other companies have some science as well. So we're all different. So what do we want to do? Well, today I want to try to share some nuggets with you that help you realize that we can understand other people, and there's some tricks to do that. And then we can use that understanding to adapt our communication style, to adapt how we communicate, when we communicate, what words we use, what words we don't use. And all of this is trying to make it a better workplace. All right, so that's what we're trying to do today. Come on, slide, go forward. There we go. Our actively disengaged employees are costing the U.S. $450 to $550 billion per year in lost productivity. All right, so why are we talking about disengaged employees when this is all about conversations and communication? Well, a leading indicator of disengaged employees is miscommunication or lack of communication between employees and their leaders. So, when you research, when you ask employees, why are they disengaged? Usually it's their manager. That is the number one reason. And a big reason that is their manager is because the manager does not communicate or communicates poorly, whether they don't give enough details, they don't communicate enough, they do it written when it should be oral, or it's oral when it should be written, vice versa. Communication is a big piece of that. So it's definitely a big factor for all of us that are in business. Here are a few more stats, and this is coming right from Gallup. If you don't know of Gallup, and if you want some information on the workforce, they are an amazing resource, so I encourage you to check them out. So here are some big ones. Organizations that have higher levels of employee engagement, they get the perks. They see higher profits, higher sales, higher customer loyalty levels. So if any of you are doing Net Promoter Score, you're going to have higher NPS scores. And if you don't know what that is, I encourage you to look at it. It's finding out, would your customers recommend you to somebody else? So it's a great key indicator that you want to be measuring. And also productivity. When employees are happy and engaged, they're working well with other people, they're going to be more productive. And communication is a foundation to help in all those areas. So now let's dive into what we've been doing, the past year or so with some research. You may have seen this study. If not, we're going to go ahead and email it to you. So this is a study we did and we're still working on. It's words that don't work. So we're using our cognitive research lab here in-house to look at words that work for people and don't work for people, because we realize that there are specific words that are triggered in your brain that when you hear those, you're going to have an adverse reaction. So we're trying to share what those words are with people so you can have better conversations and better communication. So again, if you haven't had a chance to read this, don't worry. We're going to email it to you so you don't have to go look for it. So words that don't work. And I'm going to share just a few things in here that come out of the study. Number one, communication is at the core of all that we do as human beings. I want you to think of the different ways of communication that you experience in a day-to-day basis. I mean, right now, all of you are sitting on this webinar, so it's verbal. You're seeing some visuals. How about text, SMS, right? Emails, social. So maybe some of you are on Twitter right now communicating with our marketing team. Maybe you're doing some visuals. There are so many different types of communication. And so it's difficult to be able to manage all those and really think about how should you be communicating with different people. And that's what we want to try to talk about. Now, poor communication is a major reason projects fail. Now, projects, we're really talking about the workforce here, is when you have a project team, whether or not it's a team of people who work together regularly or semi-regularly, poor communication is a huge factor when it comes to getting projects done. Now, I want you to just sit there and think for a moment, when's the last time you had a conversation that did not go well for whatever reason? Or in other words, when's the last time you had communication when the other person just did not understand you? Was it this morning? Was it yesterday? Was it the day before? More than likely, you've had those conversations very, very recently. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a little experiment with you on the webinar right now. I'm going to introduce you to a couple of what we call our driving forces. And the driving forces are the underlying foundations of why you do what you do. And once you understand why you do what you do, you understand what's going to motivate you on and off the job, in your life. But furthermore, if you understand what drives other people, you can adapt to them, to communicate better, to increase productivity, to make them happier. There's just so many outcomes of understanding other people and how to communicate with them. So what you see on the screen are two of our driving forces. Let's read both of these. On the left, we have receptive. These are people who are driven by new ideas, methods, new opportunities that find outside a defined system for living. So they like to do things differently. They like to mix things up. They don't like to do the same things over and over, and they're looking to create. On the right side, we have structured. People who are driven by traditions or traditional approaches, proven methods, a defined system for living, and principled things. So on the left, we have receptive. On the right, we have structured. Now, I'm sure some of you, as you read these, you immediately jump to either one or the other, either receptive or structured. But then some of you, you may fall somewhere in the middle. But what we want to do here is I'm going to open up a poll, and I want you to decide. If you had to decide left or right, which one are you? Would you say you're more receptive, or are you more structured? So let me go ahead and get this poll going, and hopefully I get this done right. I think I have about a 50% chance of doing this accurately. Let's give it a shot. All right, so launch the poll. Okay, so you should see a poll on your screen now, and it says, which driving force best describes you? And let's see, is it receptive or structured? Good people are responding. 65% of you, 70% of you. Let's get a few more, another 5 seconds. Ooh, almost 100%, 83%, 85%, 86%. Okay, great. I'm gonna go ahead and close the poll. And now let's share these results. 86% of the group says you are receptive. You're driven by doing new things, thinking outside the box, exploring new opportunities, where 14% of you are more structured. You like those traditional approaches, the proven methods, a defined system for living. Okay, so now that we know this, what do we do with it? Well, now let's see if I can get this off of here and pull the presentation back up. Close this, hide results, make sure my presentation's back up. Bear with me just a second. Okay, you should, nope, apologize. Just gotta make sure we get the right screen here. Okay, there we go. So we're back on the screen. And now let's go to, now that we know 86% of you chose receptive and 14 are structured, how can we better communicate with you? Well, here we go. So those of you that selected receptive, I know when I go to talk with you, I can use words like new ideas, create, explore, out of the box. And now on those of you that chose structured, I know words or phrases I can use are proven methods, traditional systems. If it's not broken, don't fix it. Traditional. So these are words or phrases that I can know about a group of people or you as individuals. So when I go to communicate, if I want to adapt to you and really increase that communication, I can use these types of words. Now, can we know these words just by having a conversation with somebody? Are we going to know what their driving forces are? Not necessarily. Now, many of you, or if not all of you, have taken some type of DISC assessment or Myers-Briggs assessment, some colors assessment, some type of behavioral tool in the past. Now, all of those are observable, right? We can observe people's behaviors and then we can adapt to them right on the fly. But with driving forces, these are more intrinsic. These are more ingrained in a person, and it's very difficult to observe them and then know what their drivers are in order to adapt. So you need to use some type of diagnostic tool to figure out what does drive them. So now let's introduce you to some of the brain work we've been doing. Now, those of you that are high on the intellectual scale, you're going to love this stuff. Those of you that are on the other side of the scale, you may not care too much. So I have to, as I'm communicating with all of you right now, I have to keep that in mind, is that some of you have the very high intellectual where you want to learn this type of stuff, where others are more on the instinctive where, yeah, you just want to know what you need to know and then go on. But what you see here is a brain image of an individual. So this is how we are using research, EEG machines in our cognitive research lab to determine what words work with individuals. So we put a cap on you, an EEG cap. We then plug you up to our machine and we put words in front of you on the screen. And we are within milliseconds identifying, are you accepting of that word? Is it kind of a neutral meaning? Or are you avoiding that word? So on the left-hand side, we see acceptance. This is indicator of somebody that has an emotional response, and it's the stimuli presented, and they're accepting of it. So all you receptive individuals, if I put the word new or creativity or new opportunities, you would be flashing on the left-hand side. That's acceptance. Those of you that were more on the structured, if I was putting up words such as new possibilities, creativity, you would probably be more on the avoidance side, and we are using EEG to see this. But now we're going to have some that are kind of in the middle. And that means that neither receptive nor structured really does anything for you. It's just neutral. So that means there's other driving forces that we have to tap into in order to get that stimuli. So that's kind of the stuff that we're doing to determine what words work, what words don't work. And then here are the 36 descriptor words that we're using. So we have our 12 driving forces, which are the bold words just outside the colored dials. And then you see each one has a set of 3 words. And those are the 3 words that we're currently testing to determine how strong are these words? Or do we need stronger words when we're communicating with people that have these drivers? So we already did our study with DISC, which is our behaviors tool, back last year. And now we're doing the driving forces study to go deeper into a person, right? Because behaviors is kind of surface level, where driving forces is deep, it's intrinsic. All right, so now let's give you some, what can you actually do? Let's talk about a 3-step process for effective dynamic conversations. Number 1, self-awareness. Do you know what drives you? You need to understand yourself very well if you're going to try to communicate with other people on a high level. So self-awareness is key. So you have to have, there's so much that goes into self-awareness, right? You can be talking emotional intelligence, talking about DISC, understanding your DISC style, to understanding what drives you. So that's key. It does take time. You have to work on it. It's self-development. So identifying what drives you as a person, that's the easy part. The more difficult part is your awareness of others. So that's where we get into step 2. Do you know what drives those around you? And how are you different? So do you know what drives those around you? So think of the people you work with. Even think of your family members, your friends who you may be closer to. Do you truly know what motivates them? Do you truly know what drives them? And then how are you different? And what would you do differently when communicating with those people if you did know what drives them? You may be surprised what drives people once you actually find out. So that third step is adapt. Once you've determined what drives you and what drives another person, you can adapt. You can adapt so both of you can have meaningful conversations. So back to that receptive and structured conversation we were having earlier. If you're receptive and you know you're going to talk to somebody that's more on the structured side, you can adapt to them. You can talk about proven methods. You can talk about things that have worked and you want to try them again if you want to enhance communication, or at least open it up for dialogue. Now let's check my control panel. You know how GoToMeeting goes. It hid from me. So if you had some questions, I'm trying to get to it. So let's go ahead and just make sure we don't have too many questions so far. This is a good one. So do you think managers should stop using emails to communicate with employees? I think email is an important part of communication. I think we'd all would say that. But what I would say in regards to that question is don't coach through email. So if you're going to be communicating with somebody through email, don't coach through email, but rather have a verbal conversation. So Tonya asked a great question about what happens if you are both receptive and structured. There are some people that fall in the middle. Now, what I'd revert you to is our other driving forces. I guarantee you're more driven by another set of driving forces, that these two are kind of neutral for you. Couple more questions. Good, actually already got that one. All right, great. So we'll jump back into the presentation here. And we're already getting to the end. I know some of you are already losing attention, so we got to get through this stuff quick. Now, I wanted to show you one of our neat reports, so something that's applicable. And what we do here is we take two people and we show them how to communicate with one another, right? So here we have Todd and Betty. So Todd's on the left side, Betty's on the right side. So imagine Todd, he's a manager, and Betty's a new employee. And Todd's sitting down with Betty, and you say, hey guys, here's how to communicate with one another. Betty, when you're talking with Todd, you need to provide him testimonials from people. You need to give him ideas to implement action. You need to let him ask questions. On the flip side, we're showing Todd how he can speak with Betty. Use her jargon, be clear, be specific, read the body language. So we're giving tips to each person based on their individual profiles, right? What's going to make best communication for them. So we have checklists for communicating, but also what not to do. So this one's probably even more important, is when I'm talking to Todd, don't be haphazard. Don't talk down to him. Don't leave decisions hanging in the air. And then when Todd talks to Betty, don't be redundant. Don't use a paternalistic approach. Don't ask rhetorical questions. So we're really giving great advice on what not to do based on the research we do in the research lab. And now this one's really easy to look at. It's just color coded. So here we have words that we show, words you can and cannot use. So with BB, that's Betty. These are words that we can use with Betty. Driving, ambitious, pioneering, strong-willed. Where Todd is on the opposite side of that scale. So when talking with Todd, you need to be using words like peaceful, modest, agreeable. So let's think about that. If we're going to talk to Todd, what's going to happen if we use words like driving, ambitious, pioneering, strong-willed? Those words aren't going to relate to him. You need to be using words down here on this side of the scale. And that's just one scale. And there's other words as you move across to the right that you can use. Now we do the same thing for driving forces. So we have a set of internal drivers for a person. And these are words you can use to have that enhanced communication. All right, so bottom line, solid self-awareness coupled with awareness of those around you is a foundation for meaningful conversations. So those 3 steps, real quick, one more time, is step number 1, know yourself. Step number 2, know those around you. And step number 3, have a way to adapt. How do we have a way to adapt? Now, if you want to learn more about this, we have a couple of resources for you. We have a nice little microsite, gives you a little bit of information. It's 12drivingforces.com. Some of you, actually most of you, probably already working with a value-added associate. and maybe you saw something today that you haven't seen before, I encourage you to reach out to your value-added associate so you can get some of the stuff we talked about today. And if you have not used any of our tools and you still want to learn more, please feel free to send me an email. Email address is right there, and we can put you in contact with one of our great value-added associates to help you learn more about what we have to offer and how we can help improve communication. Now, let me see if we have a couple more questions that we did not get to. And some of these may be a little bit too deep, so I can just email some of you offline directly. You're right, 20 minutes does go fast. I saw that. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Dina now. I think we're about done. Dina, do you have any closing comments?
You know, you just had one thing that I thought would be very interesting to those to attendees on right now, is you showed the checklist in the report, and the report compared two people. Can you go over how you show those two people together and what tool you use to get that?
Absolutely. So we'll go back in the slides if we can do so. Oh, good, it works. There we go. So something like this type of tool, right?
Right.
So, each person, we need to learn about each person individually first, right? And the way we do it at TTI Success Insights is with our assessments. So in this case, Todd takes one, Betty takes one, and they each get their own individualized personal report that they can use to learn about themselves. So that's that self-awareness piece. And then we have an easy way where they can combine the two together. And what's cool is you can combine anybody together. So I can do me and you, me and Cafe, who's sitting here, me and Todd. And so it's going to help us communicate with that other person, whoever it is we want to communicate with. Did I answer the question?
Yeah, that sounds really useful, that you could use that with your the people on your team.
Yeah, there's so many uses, right? You can use it for new people that are applying for a job, because you're probably going to use some type of assessment on the front end. So you can see, how would I communicate with this person if I hired them? You can do it for coaching. So maybe you have a coaching client, or maybe the opposite. Maybe you have an executive coach and you need to better communicate with him or her. You can use something like this.
Right. I could even see it being used somewhat in the sales, out in the sales world too, when you're trying to reach out to new clients, as well as in your own company too. So,
absolutely.
Looks great.
So many uses. Well, thank you all that were able to attend live today. There were a couple of questions on there that are kind of deep. We have your email addresses, so I'll go ahead and send you an email to your answer. And then if you have any other questions, please feel free to just shoot me an email directly, adam@ttisi.com. Thanks again. You will be receiving this recording as well as the study we referred to at the beginning. All right. And you make sure to use your hashtag if you want to keep our conversation going at #WordsThatWork. Thank you very much. Take care and see you next time.